All right, so I have plenty of Marvel news for you today. So, first off, and I'm just going to read the article, which is unusual for this channel, but it's just easier that way. All right, Marvel Television has paused development on three projects: Nova, Strange Academy, and Terror Inc. Which sucks, but I didn't even know they were in development, so there is that. And I think Emergency Awesome just did a video saying that Henry Cavill was supposed to play a character in Nova. So that escalated quickly. If I were Henry Cavill, I'd wonder what is wrong with me and superhero movies that I get attached to a project and suddenly that project goes poof. But anyway, back to the article. Sources stressed at Deadline that these projects were never officially greenlit and may still come to fruition at some point. The studio has simply shifted its priorities at the moment. Well, that might explain why I didn't realize any of those projects were being made because they weren't even greenlit. Oh, excuse me. We've told the decision is also reflexive of a new model for producing television that's emerged at Marvel in recent years. Originally, Marvel approached series development in much the same way it handled features. A slate was announced, and what was teased was more or less what got made. A couple of years ago, senior leadership decided to retool the development process as they were also revamping their new Daredevil series, Born Again. In other words, when they decided that they were going to make Daredevil a multi-season show as opposed to a one and done season like most Marvel shows have been, except for Loki and What If, because they just proved immensely popular. It just would have been silly not to make second season of it. So, Marvel's new approach to TV development is more traditional, with many more projects being developed than will ultimately be made, and showrunners being brought in to oversee each. Okay. Shifting to a more typical green light process made sense as the studio looked to maintain audience engagement amid new realities facing the industry. In addition to the prospect of superhero fatigue and content oversaturation, there was the reality of a market contraction, which led the studio to pull back significantly on the amount of projects released each year. Now, I don't know if it's superhero fatigue or that people were just annoyed with the quality. That if you're going to make a project, it should be something that's good. Because, let's face it, maybe the general audience was suffering from superhero fatigue. I don't think that the comic book audience was. Now, as I've mentioned many times before, I haven't read a comic book in a long time. But I consider myself more the comic book audience in the sense that pretty much give me a superhero project and I'm most likely to be there. Within reason. Like, I do not watch The Boys on Netflix. Actually, I no longer have Netflix. I don't watch Invincible. So, it's not like I'm gonna watch every project. Heck, as you might have noticed, I've not been watching The Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So, mainly because I'm not a fan of Spider-Man. So, there is a limit to that. With me, anyway. But I do not consider myself the general public in that I'm willing to accept more Looney Tune stuff, more craziness that happens in comic books because I'm familiar with that world. I know that comic books can get super crazy. So, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a general audience, but I'm not exactly comic book either. I'm somewhere in between. So, I don't know. Maybe they are suffering from superhero fatigue. I'm not. I'm definitely not. Content oversaturation. Um, I don't know. That I guess would go with superhero fatigue. I guess for some people if you are making tons and tons of movies, like I don't go to the movies. I wait for it to show up on Disney Plus or Max or whatever. So I don't suffer from that content oversaturation because I just wait patiently for the movies to make it to streaming and then I watch them. So I don't suffer from that. But um if by content oversaturation they mean every little every little character gets their own project because the previous leadership thought that, oh, Marvel is popular, let's just, you know, just keep pushing out like a Pez dispenser, pushing out projects because that's obviously what people want. Taking the same lesson, taking the wrong lesson from the popularity. They're popular because these are, number one, characters that people have heard of. I mean, you don't have to be a comic book reader to have heard of Batman, Superman, um, Spider Man. So many of these characters were well known that, you know, of course people would want to watch those movies. But when it came to characters that not only did the general audience never hear of, but that it wasn't a big character even amongst comic book fans, then you kind of lost the plot. So there is that. So if you're talking about let's make a project for every character in the Marvel universe ever. Yeah, that could be problematic because like I said, I don't watch every project. Like I don't watch Spider-Man because I'm not a fan of Spider-Man. Um I didn't watch Guardians of the Galaxy not because I'd never heard of them, which that was one of the reasons, but it seemed like it was more jokey than plot driven. Um it sounds like I was probably wrong about that, but I just couldn't get into watching Guardians of the Galaxy. So I didn't. Do I follow along with what's happening in the movie so I can understand things that are happening in the movies and TV shows I want to watch? Absolutely. But I pick and choose. So maybe that is why I'm not oversaturated with content because I didn't watch everything, nor was I inclined to. But I guess if you don't want to find videos of people who are willing to catch you up to speed as to what's happening with a project, like, because I followed videos about WandaVision, didn't watch it, but except for the last couple of episodes. But I followed along. I had an idea of what was happening. Plus, like I said, I watched the last couple of episodes. So when I would talk to someone about it, about Doctor Strange 2, they didn't understand why Wanda went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They didn't understand why she was kind of sort of evil. They didn't understand the fact that the Darkhold was doing all sorts of things to her brain. Um, or how in the world she ended up with a couple of kids. And it would have really thrown them for a loop to find out that Vision is the father, but that's a different story. So I did follow along, so it did make sense to me. But a lot of people don't because they're casual fans. So they're not going to want to watch every project just to understand one movie. So I get that. And market contraction, I do not know. I assume that just means that that because of the first problem, not as many people were going to watch the movies, which fair. It's kind of hard to release projects when you are expecting. It's one thing for comic book fans to, oh, you need to read this comic book series or that comic book series, because a lot of those comic books just organically people are drawn to. General audiences don't think like that. If they did, they would be comic book fans and they would be reading this comic book series and that comic book series and the other until they have a National Geographic pile worth of comic books. So I get that. There's one thing to tie into other projects, and it's entirely another thing to make it impossible to follow based on, you have to know everything, every little thing. Either watch the movies, watch the TV shows, or follow along on videos like I follow Emergency Awesome. Follow people who will tell you what's happening so you are prepared for these projects. So I assume that that's what that means. Let's see. Marvel has spoken publicly about the overhaul of its development strategy, as in a Screen Rant interview published last August with Brad Winderbaum, Marvel Studios head of TV, streaming, and animation. And this isn't obviously from Screen Rant. This is from Deadline, this article. We're developing more than we make now, so we actually have a few different things brewing that we might see through to at least a pilot script to see if we want to make it, said Winderbaum. But there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's hard to choose favorites. We're really being careful about what we choose to do next. Right, because they want to make quality entertainment as opposed to under the previous regime, which was just flood the zone with everything you can think of, and then hopefully people will like it. When the beauty of Marvel is that prior to Phase 4, I think it was Phase 4, people, they didn't feel the need to make a TV series about every character that they introduce, or make a movie about every character they plan on introducing. They focus on the big stories and what they want to tell. And that's why Marvel was popular, because it was cohesive, people could follow along, and it wasn't, let's do a show on every character that's ever happened in Marvel. So, if you're going to do a show, like, I was excited for Secret Invasion because it's a Nick Fury based show. I love Nick Fury. I want to pretend that show never happened. It's like, they didn't really know. It's like they wanted to do a Nick Fury show, but they didn't know exactly how to go about it. how to do the show on Scrolls and make it good. And it was just, yeah, whoever thought that up. I understand that at this point, Kevin Feige couldn't oversee all the different projects, so he had to delegate. And apparently, his lieutenants suck. Nick Kevin Feige is much better at Marvel when he can personally oversee everything, simply because he's got that vision, he knows what he's doing. So hopefully the ship has been righted, and I would love to see I heard teased that they were going to do a Midnight Suns show. I would love to see that. I would love to. There's a lot of shows I would love to see, or maybe movies, but we don't need to rush it. Let's just develop it to the point where it's good and then make it, as opposed to, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And yeah. All right. Originally, Marvel turned to Sabir Pirzada to pen an adaptation of Nova, as we revealed in 2022. As I said, this is Deadline. Boasting multiple aliases, the original and most famous being Richard Rider, Nova is a character created by Marv Wolfman and John Romita Sr., a cosmic-powered hero and last survivor of the intergalactic military police force known as the Nova Corps, who wield the Nova Force to protect the universe. The character first appeared in Nova number 1 in 1976. Marvel was active on the project as recently as this past December, announcing then that Criminal Minds love Ed Bernero had been hired as the writer and showrunner for this series, replacing Pirzada. So that's always a killer when we start going through writers. So that basically is the kiss of death. I've noticed that writers, directors, once there's a revolving door, yeah, that they're going to end up in development hell, at the very least. If Nova was the most concrete of the three projects put on pause, Strange Academy and Terror Inc. were also rumored for some time to be in development as series for Disney+. Strange Academy would have been an adaptation of the eponymous comic book series created by Scotty Young and artist Humberto Ramos, which debuted in March 2020. Set in New Orleans, it centers on a school founded by Dr. Strange to educate young individuals with magical abilities. The show was expected to focus on Wong, portrayed by Benedict Wong, and his leadership of the school. It is not clear who is attached to develop the show. And, oh dear God, I hope they didn't try to do a Harry Potter ripoff. Please, 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 please. I can only imagine that whoever was in charge wanted it to go in that direction. And, I mean, obviously there's only so many ways you can portray a magical school for youngsters, but please no. Launched in 1992, the comic series Terror Inc. centers on an anti-hero by the name of Terror, who possesses the ability to incorporate the body parts of others into his own form, gaining their memories and abilities. I can see why he's called Terror. That sounds terrifying. Created by Dan Chichester, Margaret Clark, and Klaus Janson. The character first appeared under the name Shrek. You're kidding me. in St. George Number 2 in August 1988 before being reintroduced as Terror in the 92 series. Maybe because there was a popular movie series by that point called Shrek. I assume. Oh, wait, I don't know. Was Shrek already around in the 90s? Again, no word on who was involved with development. Up next for Marvel Television is Daredevil Born Again on March 4th, of which I will do videos for. Elsewhere, live-action series coming up for release this year include Ironheart on June 24th, which, for those who haven't been following, this is under the old model of Marvel, under the old regime, where they gave everybody their own TV show, regardless of whether it was good or not. So, don't expect a lot from this show. And Wonder Man, which is expected to debut this December. I'm not sure. That one might also be one of those that was, let's, spin the wheel and see which character we're going to do next. I'm not sure, because Wonder Man is such a big part of Scarlet Witch and Vision's storyline that it could have been that they would have done this anyway. So I don't know if it's under the old model or not. On the film side, the studio launched Captain America Brave New World on Valentine's Day and has so far seen the film pull in over $204 million globally. Thunderbolts is next up on May 2nd, with the Fantastic Four First Steps following on July 25th. Thunderbolts looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. From what I've heard of the Captain America movie, it's basically their way of sidestepping the issue of Universal won't let them release Incredible Hulk movies. So they had to make an Incredible Hulk movie, but call it something else. So, yeah. Like I said, Thunderbolts looks really fun. I've done a couple of trailer reviews on this channel. And the Fantastic Four, that I've also done a trailer review for. And I'm really interested to see how that works out, because they've tried a couple of times, and all I want out of this movie, because I watched the latest Fantastic Four movie before this, and my only problem with that movie was it was entertaining, but there actually I had two problems. Number one, love triangle, which pisses me the hell off. I mean, seriously, make Sue Storm just something that two guys fight over? Okay, no. I realize that that's probably how things started in the 60s because sexism, but let's not go there. And also, the things, it's clobbering time. He sounded hella bored when he said it. It just didn't strike me as the kind of way that I picture the Thing talking. So yeah, hopefully those two things are rectified in this new movie. Now, this does take place in the 60s, so it's possible that there's a love triangle, but they're supposed to already have their powers, and my understanding is Doctor Doom doesn't appear till probably a post-credit scene, because it's RDJ. So yeah. So I'm hoping that there's no love triangle anywhere to be seen. It's just a matter of how does the Thing say it's clobbering time, because I wanted to have some oomph behind it. Anyway, that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.